Boris, Macedonia, welcome. 3 degrees. Yeah, see, that's pretty cold. There was definitely like frost on our windows this morning. So I think it was a bit colder. Ranin, Syria, 16 degrees. Not warm, but not freezing cold, I guess. Good afternoon. Hi, Sam, from Zimbabwe. Wonderful, delightful 24 degrees. That is the best temperature there is, isn't it? Like right around that 24, 25 mark where it's just perfectly warm and it's not hot and it's not cold. Artem, welcome from Ukraine. 4 degrees. Is that four? I think that's four, not -4. Anyone have snow? I guess that's another good question. Anyone have snow? I'm Canadian originally, so I love a bit of snow in December, as long as there's snow before Christmas normally. Eve's from Kigali, welcome. Great to have you here. Apollinaire from Cameroon, welcome. 28 degrees. Oh, again, right around there. Perfect temperature. Getting a bit warm, but that's beautiful. Annika, welcome from Switzerland. 2 degrees. I bet, can you like look up into the mountains and see snow? I bet you can. Okay, this is in my head. I'm like, oh, everyone in Switzerland can see mountains, right? I don't actually know if that's true. Welcome. Great. Yeah, if you're joining, just jump into the chat. Tell us what your name is. Tell us what country you're from and what's the temperature. Too far from the mountains, unfortunately. That's okay. We actually had a donor once who she was from Switzerland and she was amazing. And if we had a call scheduled and it snowed, she was like, sorry, I'm off skiing today. We're gonna have to reschedule. I loved it. I was like, yes, I think we should all make more time for snow when that happens. Salim from Tanzania, welcome. And this is Jaward, I think, Bautista, welcome. 29 degrees, amazing. Oh, and it's this evening. So that's a beautiful evening, actually. 29 degrees. All right, I've just taken some hot coffee as I get started because we are going to have some fun today, and I'm going to try to bring a little bit of energy here. We are going to be talking about the rise of the data specialist, right? So data analysis and visualization for kind of three things, and we're going to get into this a little bit: impact, credibility, and fundability. So I ran this webinar yesterday. So for some of you, you may have heard about this from people who were on yesterday, or maybe you have heard about this from emails or social media or something, or have had it recommended. So whatever kind of brought you here, a huge welcome. My name's Jana. I'm going to introduce myself in a minute. Data helps you build credibility as a team, project, and organization. Okay, analyze it and visualize it and use it to tell a credible story about your impact. This positions yourself as a trustworthy team for funding and partnership, okay? This is kind of the intro slide to this webinar. It sets the scene for what our kind of core topic is going to be about today. But we're going to dive into data analysis, data visualization, but centered around this concept of impact and credibility and funding, really. This training is for you if you believe programs should be about impact, not about data itself, okay? Impact and people is our core focus. You want to grow your training, your impact and your funding. Sorry, I'm thinking about training because there's this big word training at the top. Every time I glance to my screen, I'm like, right, training. You want to grow your impact and your funding. Or you're already making an impact, but you aren't proving that story with believable data. So kind of those three areas, I just want you to know you're in the right place. If that's kind of who you are, you're showing up and you're like, right, I'm more about people than I am about numbers. Yeah, you're in the right place and you want to back up your impact, okay? Now, I want to know who's in the room. So I want you in the chat box. We've already practiced a little bit of chat box writing here, but I want you to jump back to the chat box and I want you to give me a 1 if you are in an M&E or information management, some sort of data related role. I want you to give me a 2 if you're more on the program side, so a program officer, manager, or coordinator. I want you to give me a 3 if you're more on the leadership side of things, or senior management, so country directors, COO, CEO, that kind of thing. Or 4 if you are more on the support side of things. So you're a logistician, support officer, a finance person. Give me who's in the room. Okay, so we got some 2s and some 1s. 1s, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2. Hi, John. Welcome. Great to have you here. Mel, so I'm going to guess you're a one. Who else do we have in the room? We've got someone from a support role. Annika's a one. Raymond's a four. Great. Who else? What else? What else? Meal. Okay, so that you're number one. That's great. So one, two, and four in the room. That sounds perfect for this session. What I'd love to kind of offer you is if you stay to the end, we've got two rewards for your participation today. So first of all, I'm going to be giving you a cool PDF handout. The only way to get it is to come to one of these webinars. So it's basically a cheat sheet on impact data analysis and visualization. So what are kind of different visuals you can try out and some tips for visualization. Number two is I want to make sure that you have access to our two most popular courses that are for free on the Humanitarian Data Academy. So I'll be sharing the link at the end to that. Okay, so I know who you are. Now I want to know why you're here. Okay, so we're going to jump back to the chat box and there are another four options. Okay, so why did you show up today? First of all, maybe you're struggling to get new donors to say yes to funding your proposals and projects, and you're wondering if or how data might help. Okay. Number two, maybe your current donors keep asking, where's the evidence? So you need to know ways to use data better for your reports and proposals to keep them on board. So that's more about your current funding and your current donors. Number three, you're already a data champion on your team and you're looking for ways to improve your own skills to support your team better. So number three is about you're here for your own skill development. And number four is you're responsible for overseeing multiple other people in your organization who are responsible for data, and you want to see what they might be missing. Okay, so ways to support your team more with digital literacy. So which one are you? Jump into the chat box and tell me, are you here because you're struggling with getting new funding? It could be number one. Number two, are you struggling with kind of maintaining your current funding, or you want to make sure you maintain your current funding? Number three, you're here for your own skill development. Or number four, you're looking at team skill development. Okay, so we've got three. John's a 2, 3, and 4. Amazing. Annika, 3. We've got a 2 and 3 from Jubilee. Perfect. Hayes, a 2. Alex, a 2 and 3. Raneem is a 3. Salim is a 3. Augustine is a 3. So lots of places all over, but a lot of you are here for number 3, which is perfect. So we're going to be talking about funding today. So even when you're developing your own skill development, understanding why and how it plays into the bigger picture of organizational approaches and programming. But the other thing that we're going to do is just make sure that we do lots of hands-on stuff, okay? Because you're data people, you're here for your own skill development. We're going to make sure we do some practical exercises. So I'll be giving you a download of an Excel spreadsheet in a minute, and you're going to be able to work along with me. Whatever your motivation for being here, you made the right choice. You've done it. You've come, and I have probably been to where you are before. I've developed my own skills and been to webinars and everything. So just want you to know you're in the right place. And any questions you have, feel free to drop them in the chat as we go through. A few months ago, I got this email into my inbox. I'm part of the emailing list, Gates Notes, Gates Insider email list. And it was titled A Look Back and a Look Ahead. And they were reflecting over like the last 20 years or something of the Gates Foundation work and what they'd funded and the progress that they had been that they'd made. And they've done amazing work, right, over the last couple of decades. Perfect. But in the first paragraph, and this is why I took a picture of this email, there basically is a sentence when they were saying, what has been our most transformative breakthrough? It has been better data, okay? And that was what Bill Gates wrote earlier this year, okay? And when you think of the Gates Foundation and how much money they give and the causes that they're committed to solving as problems that are solvable, when you're thinking, he says that the most important or transformative breakthrough was better data, it's like, I'm going to sit up and pay attention, right? If he says that, probably there's something to it. I think the rest of us are probably there, right? Okay, yes, we know that data is important, but I think that that's really important. That's what a prominent donor or funder is saying, and that's important for us to pay attention and bring that into our own program. So making sure that we're taking that on as organizations, and our data is transformative. We can show that to funders, to people who are looking at funding our programs. So here are kind of 3 points. Data doesn't collect itself or turn itself into insights, actions, and impact, right? And we know that, right? It takes work, it takes effort to collect that data. The system to collect data, process it, analyze it, report it, act on it, that doesn't create itself either, okay? What it comes down to is the person, someone who cares enough to figure out how that data and how that system should work, and they have the resilience, the time, and the persistence to actually make it happen, to implement it. And as we kind of do this webinar, and I'm prepping for Humanitarian Data Academy courses, and I'm delivering that and training. That is the biggest thing that we need to remember, and that's why we do what we do, is because data doesn't make itself up. Systems don't create themselves. It is people. And so we're here to invest in you. Thank you for investing in yourself and for your team, because you are the people that make this happen. Now, how did I get started in data? This started many years ago. So I started working in Sudan. That was my first kind of humanitarian posting, and my background is in water engineering. So I came as a WATSAN manager, water and sanitation manager, and I worked with this amazing team in Sudan. And our very first kind of task was, we needed a program had been running for several years, and we needed to close it down. Okay, so this was kind of what our approach was. So we brought in a consultant, and they did all of this basically qualitative data collections. I had a pile of beads, put it in the middle of a kind of a community meeting, and then say, can you take this pile of beads and split it into 2 groups? One group which represents people who have latrines or toilets and use kind of sanitation facilities, and a second pile of people or houses that don't have latrines or sanitation facilities, so would have to go to the bush for sanitation purposes. And I'm a water person, and we always talk about toilets and that kind of thing. So sorry if that's abnormal to talk about here. But anyway, and so they would split this pile of beads into 2, and then we would write it down. We would count out the beads, how many, what percentage, there were 100 beads, what percentage were, had a latrine, and what percentage did not hold a latrine. And then we would go to the next village and do that. And so we were trying to build an evidence base for, were we ready to close our program down and move it to a new location? As an engineer, I'm used to a little bit more robust data collection. So I would have expected maybe we did a survey of households, or maybe observed, gone around and picked every 10th household or something, and said, do you have a toilet? Can we see it? Something a little bit more quantitative, rather than, what they said in that group discussion is what we report. But we didn't do that. We actually wrote down, something like 46% said they have a toilet and 54% still don't have a toilet. And then we reported that in our funder log frame back to the funder, that said 46% yes, 54% no. Those aren't the exact numbers, but they were close to, they were fairly high. And, it kind of gave evidence for why we should shut this program down. So I was a little bit shocked, and I was like, surely there must be better ways to collect data. Okay. Now, this is before smartphones were a thing. This is long before data collection was a lot more normal and regular. So we're going back a few years here. But there was a turning point where we actually, our team said, look, we need to get better at data. So we're going to liaise with the Johns Hopkins University. Now, I was very young. I had not done kind of field level surveys before. But these researchers came out and they taught us on how do we collect this data following a survey methodology called LQAS, Lot Quality Assurance Sampling. It's all very complex. They took us through it for 3 days, and then they came with us to do this random sampling methodology, collected all this data, and they took all of these pieces of paper back to the university. They entered it all and sent us some analysis a couple of months later. Okay. And the data that we got back was quite different than what we had presented to the funder the year before, right? Our numbers all of a sudden went way down. Instead of 46% having toilets, it was more like 11% having toilets or something like that. And again, these aren't exact numbers. This is quite a long time, and I'm trying to remember. The exact numbers are never going to be there. But anyway, the idea of it really stuck with me. This is how I became really interested in impact data. So we gave all of these new numbers to the donor. And of course, all of our numbers or indicators were now a lot lower. But instead of saying, oh, why have you gotten a lot worse? Or why did you tell us way higher numbers last year? They just said, okay, great. Well, now we know that your data is actually a lot more trustworthy and reportable, whatever. We're going to keep giving you a little bit of extra money each year so that you can continue to report that better methodology. And that was really the turning point and my first lesson in impact data and the importance of that relationship with your funder. They cared just as much as we did about trying to understand what our impact was and what the situation was on the ground. And that communication between us, it built trust. We built a relationship around data, and they committed not just the same amount of money, but a little bit more amount of money as we continued because they knew they could trust our data. Okay. I have a lot of other stories when it comes to funders and data and how that really helps the conversation because it proves a lot of credibility. But we're going to talk about that in a minute. But at least that's kind of the story when I was quite young that introduced me to the whole world and since the whole world of data. And since then, it's been an exciting story. If you don't know me, my name is Jana Rouse. I am a water engineer by training, so that's how I got started. Now I do a lot more around digital literacy training with humanitarians and change makers the world over kind of thing. But I'm also married and have 3 children. So this is a picture of 2 of my children here on the main photo. And then we had number 3 last year as a bit of a surprise. So that is kind of how I spend a lot of my time is carting these 3 around and then in front of the camera being able to help and support people around the world doing data. So I run the Humanitarian Data Academy, where we help humanitarians and social change makers collect, analyze, and visualize better data. We have, over the years, it's been very exciting. We got started on YouTube. Now we have a kind of learning platform where we've got 12 different courses and communities, over 400 training videos. We're almost there to 1,000 certificates issued, which means a lot of work on the behalf of a lot of students, over 2,500 enrolled students, and we're getting close to 20,000 lessons completed. So that's been an exciting just time watching these numbers change over the years and knowing that we're reaching into a lot of different countries and contexts. So that is kind of a brief history of the Humanitarian Data Academy and myself. Where are we going to go today? Okay, so you've come here. What are we going to do? So we've just done our welcome. Where we're going to jump into next is the fundable flywheel. Okay, and I'm going to introduce the concept of how do we link funding and data and why is data important. And it is more important now than it was, say, 20, 25 years ago. So it is a changing story over time. And it will change again now with the advent of AI. But anyway, we're going to talk about the fundable flywheel. Then we're just going to very briefly remind ourselves about the data cycle. So understanding where does data analysis and visualization sit in the broader data cycle. Then we're talking about a case study. So we're going to do a deep dive into a case study measuring the impact of a training program. And I'm going to leave you with case study 2 that you can take away and practice on your own. And then we'll jump into a little bit at the end, the data specialist learning journey. So especially for those of you who are data specialists, who are those people that make this happen in your own team, we'll talk about what's next. Where do you go from here after you've attended this webinar? So let's start here, the fundable flywheel. Okay, so the fundable flywheel starts with impact. Now, if you make impact, if you think your organization does a great job, I want you to just jump in the chat right now. Let's get a little interaction going and just give me a yes or impact, okay? Put one of those 2 words into the chat. If your organization you think makes a good impact, you're quite proud to work with who you work with, I just want you to jump in and say yes or impact, okay? And I want to see that you're still with me. Impact, yes. Thank you, Jubilee. Augustine, yes. Irina, Annika, yes. Perfect. Raneem, I see you. Ahmed, thank you. Abdullah, Jawad, perfect. Yep. Keep saying it. Let me know you're here. Yep. We are creating impact. And really, I can't help you create impact. You work for a unique organization. You have specialist knowledge, especially in contexts and the way you work, that is unique to you. And that is your job, right? As organizations, it doesn't matter if you're the tiniest community-based organizations fully running on volunteers through to, a massive international NGO that's got loads of funding. It doesn't really matter who you are. Your job is to create impact, and get excited about that and be proud of what you do and who you do it for. So that is something I can't help you do. That's your job. But then when you are creating impact, your next job is to capture that impact in some sort of evidence that helps you build credibility with other people who want to support your cause or your impact, right? So what that might look like is, especially in the beginning, is you usually get a story. You find someone that's been part of your program, you sit down and you say, hey, how has this changed in your life? What has this helped? Tell me a little bit about your story. And usually that's a discussion. We have a picture, we have a little clip, and then we send that out maybe to an email to some of our friends or supporters who care about what we do, okay? And so we put this in front of a friend or someone with a little bit of money, and they give you $100. And they're like, yeah, that is a really cool story. I want you to be able to do that for more children or for more refugees or for more displaced people or for more, it could be an environmental program. It doesn't really matter. We want your cause to expand, okay? So that little bit of extra funding is going to help you then make a little bit more impact, okay? So this thing that was completely volunteer driven now has a little bit of funding and now can make more impact, okay? And then you get some more credibility, right? So maybe you collect a story, but maybe you now have a spreadsheet tracker and you're going to track, well, what are all the activities that we did this year and how many people did we reach? Last year we reached 20, but this year we were able to reach 100 or 1,000, okay? And then you put that little bit of evidence in front of your friends or donors, and they give you a little bit more money. And it's kind of turns into this cycle that gets bigger and bigger. And that's how you start with a small organization, but you end up later on down the line, after several cycles of this, as a bigger impact, a bigger organization with more impact, okay? So that's why I'm calling it a flywheel. That the more you kind of feed into it, the bigger it grows, all right? So we know from that the thing that kind of connects impact to fundability or funding is this credibility piece. And so when I talk about data, I'm talking specifically about that credibility piece. So when I say that I'm more about people than I am about numbers, okay, or that's what we are about at the Humanitarian Data Academy, it's not that, our direct work often as data people isn't directly with people, but we're connecting that impact that we want to have with people directly to someone who supports that cause and wants more impact to happen. So the credibility piece connects that impact to the funding, which is what allows more impact to happen, okay? So that's kind of where I want you to kind of picture the whole data piece is in that credibility section. But what does that data cycle look like? And this is just a refresher. Lots of people will kind of present different versions of a data cycle. I'm just going to give a really kind of simple one here. First of all, we collect data, okay? And that's where I always want to start, because if you collect a little bit of data, then it forces the rest of the data cycle to happen, because you collect some data and then people go, so what did it say? And then you have to kind of set it up, put it into Excel or some tables, and then you analyze it, right? So you structure it, you then analyze and turn it into maybe some charts. So you visualize it, and then you maybe put it into a report, or you do a presentation, or you send it out in an email, okay? So you present it so that somebody can make an action or take an action or make a decision. So yes, I'm going to give you more money, or yes, we need to change our activity plan for tomorrow because I can see that we've already reached these 3 villages. So we shouldn't go there again tomorrow. We should go to, 3 new villages. Okay, great. So what we're doing is we're just putting those data visualizations in front of somebody who has a decision to make or an action to take. And then we're back to collecting more data and the cycle continues. And what I would say then is that whole cycle sits in what I kind of envision as a cloud of data protection, okay? So as soon as you kind of start collecting data, then you go, ooh, now we're holding maybe some sensitive data, maybe some personal data about some people, and we're making decisions on their behalf. So I think we should protect their data. And that's a good thing to have. So I would say you always want to kind of put a cloud of data protection around that. And that looks different from data collection. So you might have certain protocols that you follow, or standards or rules that you follow when you collect data. And you might have different rules for when you report data or analyze data or store it. So each kind of step in the process has its own little data protection part. But you're always thinking about, okay, now we're being responsible for people's digital identity in some respect. So we have to take care of that because now we're making decisions on their behalf about their data. So it's always kind of couched in that data protection cloud. All right, so that's what I'm going to call a very simple data cycle. Okay, so there are lots of different versions of that around the world, but there you go. Now we're going to jump to a spreadsheet. I'm going to show you my spreadsheet. It is here. Here we go. So this is my spreadsheet, but I do have a version of this. When I get to case study 1, I have a version of this that we can start working together on. So I'm going to give you the, not that one. Here I go here. I'm going to give you this link, and I would love for you just to jump. I'm just putting this in the chat. Just jump to this website. And it says, get the Excel workbook companion. So this is just going to be, once I get to case study 1, it has all the data there so you can work alongside me as I teach this. But you've got a few minutes to kind of click and download that. So I'm going to let you do that. Let me just jump back to Excel. And we're just going to do another quick brainstorm. So why do you want to do data analysis and visualization in your organization? So what I'd love for you to do is think about your own organization. Okay, and think about the data analysis and visualization you want to do. What's the purpose? Why are you doing it? Or why do you want to do it? So jump into the chat box and tell me why. Now, I know I just sent you off to download something, so maybe some of you are distracted. But let me get your attention back here. Jump into the chat. Why do you want to do data analysis and visualization? I'm going to wait for you to respond here. Take another sip of my coffee. So what's the purpose of data analysis and visualization? Amazing. Arena, thank you very much. So to present justification for decision makers. Perfect. So I'm going to copy that in here. Let me make this bigger. Perfect. Present the impact of our interventions to the management and to the donors. Perfect. Yep. To review milestones. Yes. So we're often looking at progress, aren't we? We're looking at, okay, how have we done so far on our project? What are kind of the activities we have left to do? Oh, yes, here's a good one. Jubilee, improve programming for participants. Yeah, so we're actually looking often at kind of seeing how's it working so far and what do we want to do. We've got evidence-based decisions. Thank you very much, Abdullah. Sam, to improve understanding of and engagement with data trends and patterns and bring findings to life. Yeah, that's interesting. So we're trying to look for trends and patterns that we can't see without it. I love that. Yeah. Annika, demonstrate our impact in a way that's easier to understand than just figures alone and more visually appealing. Yes. So let me put that in here. So we're demonstrating our impact in a way that's easier to understand. And sometimes that has a lot to do with visualizing, right? Not many people like to look at big spreadsheets full of numbers and data, but they will look at a picture if you can turn that into a picture for them. So it's more understandable, more appealing. Okay, so we've got Apollinaire for data-based informed decision-making. Perfect. And John, you said to turn raw data into clear, actionable insights. Yeah. So raw data in and of itself often isn't very understandable, and it isn't like information necessarily. So we kind of have to do some stuff with it to turn it. I love this, and I love the groupthink. Augustine, I'll take this as the last one, learning from and sharing what we do. Yes. So even if we're trying to advocate for a change with policymakers, or if we're trying to make our own program better and we're trying something new or innovation, then we're trying to say, okay, well, what can we learn from this for next time? Great. So if I ask the same question, who do we need to present our data to? And give me some quick fire answers in the chat again. Who are we presenting to? So all these like purposes, so we've got lots of different purposes. Who are we actually, and if we break that into external and internal kind of stakeholders, who are we presenting to? Managers, 100%. Yep, managers, our bosses. Yeah. Beneficiaries. I am so happy that came up in the beginning and not at the end. Beneficiaries. We are often reporting to beneficiaries. HQ. Yeah. Local authorities. So HQ, local authorities, 100%. Yeah. So local governance or other kinds of local authorities. Donors. Yeah, there's another good one. Thanks for all those good ones, Irina. Abdullah, beneficiaries. Yes, I love this one. ×2. C-suite, yeah. So people who are making decisions at desks far away. Partners and back donors, other organizations to know more about our interventions, 100%. Yeah. Partners, donors, that kind of thing. Collaborators, yeah. Like that could be even, you're at a sector working group or a cluster or something. Project stakeholders, perfect. Yes, John. So project stakeholders, and sometimes that's more broad. Investors, 100, yep, perfect here. Investors, clusters, and private funds. Love it. Private funds. Great. I had some, oops, will you let me do this? If I unhide a column here. So I had some other, just some pre-thinking here. Organized donors. So that's your kind of trusts, foundations, governments, philanthropists. You have individual donors. So monthly givers, your friends, your family, who are giving just out of their own pocket. People who care but aren't donors. So you might have email subscribers or WhatsApp communities who are just staying in touch and want to know what you're doing and hear from you. We've got websites, social media, posters that you're kind of advertising what you're doing. Communities, individuals, participants, and beneficiaries, so people who are part of our programming, who are trying to reach and support. Your manager, look, manager and HQ are exactly the same as what the brainstorm was. So my brainstorm with myself was the same as yours. It's great. Team or wider update meetings, strategy days, 100%. Yeah. I think someone has come up with, for another board one, someone said like a board of directors. We often have to present to boards. So great. When you kind of step back and think about it, and I'm going to give one example from an external stakeholder and one example from an internal, and then we'll move on. But let's just look very briefly at like a funder or a donor as an example of an external person who wants to see your data. And often this is kind of how we're connecting impact to funding is presenting our data to donors. So they have, just like us, emotional drivers. They are people, they have a job. Their job is to give money and give it well and make sure that they do a good job and steward the money that they have to give away. Make sure they steward that well, okay? So their emotional drivers are very human. Just like you and I have emotional drivers to do a good job, they also want to do a good job. So I was thinking about this in the way that we present data. It is about relationship. And I think I've had some amazing relationships with my donors over the years, people who have invested in our program and made a lot of things possible. And that's been both private and government-based. But one of the things that they want to know is we made the right decision to hire or fund you, right? So they want to know with your data, they made a good decision. Okay. They also want to see long-lasting change. The more sustainable, the better, right? So most of us, the way we spend our money is not just on, oh, I would like to spend my money, and then it has no impact by tomorrow, right? When we buy things for our house or for our children, or when we invest in a company or an organization who's making an impact, we want to know that that money is not just impacting today, but it's having a ripple effect and impacting into the future as well. So they want to see that. They want to see that sustainability piece. The organization we funded is really high quality at execution, at creating impact, at being leaders. And they do it with amazing value for money. So they want to know that we're doing a good job, that we're kind of leading in our sector or in our field. We're innovating, we're sharing what we're learning at coordination groups. They want to be able to see that we have a really high quality of work. Another emotional driver might be this organization makes us look good when we present them to colleagues or constituents. We can easily share what they're doing on social media or with in our newsletter or whatever, and we love to share that we're funding them and partnering with them. So they want to get really excited. The same way as you get excited about what you do, they're excited about what you do because they're helping to make it possible. So these are kind of some of the ideas I was brainstorming around. What are some of those emotional drivers when we're presenting to donors, and how do we kind of help that? Because even if we're working with government donors, the people are making the decision, right? It's the person on the other end that's reading that proposal or making that decision, and they're thinking about things from their own human lens. Yeah. Okay, now let's flip to an internal example. Okay, so internally, what might people be thinking when they see your data? So this is more if you as a person in your team are presenting data to other people in your team, or kind of as a group that you're kind of creating a report. You're sharing it to your team. What are they thinking? What are their emotional drivers? So first of all, maybe, well, we love having you on the team. They want to know that they like working with you and that you're doing a good job. They're glad they hired you. Okay, we can trust you. We don't have to worry. We don't have to micromanage you because we know you're going to do a good job. Yeah. Hey, you really understand the needs of the community. Yeah. They want to know as a team that you have really got a good grasp on the needs assessments or the community that you're supporting. They want to know that you as a team or an individual, you make the whole organization more impactful through that data you're presenting or through what you're communicating to them. Hey, you make us look good when we present to stakeholders. Okay, we can take your program, we can take your data, we can share it to communities or donors or other stakeholders, to government partners, that kind of thing. And your work shows up and does a good job when we present it. Great. So that's just kind of, again, quick little brainstorm. I would recommend do this kind of a brainstorm on all these kind of different stakeholders. If you're doing a report or an email or sending some data out, take 2 minutes and just run through, well, what is the emotional driver of that audience? Whoever's reading my report, what do they want to be hearing, right? What are the things that they're worried about? Because they're just people like you and me. Okay. Going very quickly to kind of what kind of data visualization you want to do. I kind of had 4 different examples here. So one might be operational action taking or decision making. So that's kind of your day-to-day activity reports, that kind of thing. What kind of decisions or visualization do we need on a day-to-day basis? Progress, so overall project progress. Are we on track? Are we not on track? Monitoring and accountability. So are we doing what we said we would be doing? And then like impact or evaluation. So at the end of the project, let's look at the overall kind of improvement we've made in a community. So we've kind of got different types of data visualization or reporting that we're going to want to be doing. So understanding where you are in this kind of overview, what kind of a report you're making is quite helpful. The other thing that I kind of want to talk about is indicators. So we often hear the word indicators. What are your indicators? What are you trying to reach or hit? I've not shown this before, but I have like a list of indicators that I keep beside my desk. Like this is what I'm trying to achieve. Even just through the Humanitarian Data Academy and when I'm teaching or something like that, I keep a list of goals, right? So I have these performance guesses. So I'm calling them performance guesses because it's a word that most people don't use. So I'm just trying to get your brain to think about it a little bit differently. But what I've done when I've made my list of indicators is I've taken a guess. I've taken a guess at what I can do in the next 3 months or the next year or the next 5 years. I've taken a guess at how I'm going to perform and if I'm going to be successful or not. And I said, okay, I want to reach this many people or I want to do this. Okay. So you're going to have that somewhere in your team or organization, right? So it might be, you might have like an M&E plan or a framework. You might have a project plan that might be in your proposal or something. Maybe your organization has a vision or mission, which has some of your kind of like performance guesses baked into that, or a strategy document. So first of all, kind of understand, where do you store the guesses you've taken previously on how well you're going to do or what you're going to do for your project. Okay. And so when we're kind of tracking data, we're going to be comparing it sometimes, usually a lot of times, to kind of what our original hypotheses or guesses were in terms of what our performance was going to be. Then when you look at those performance guesses, you kind of have like a variety of different outcomes possible. So one would be, ooh, you're succeeding as expected. So, if I take an example, one of my indicators, I'm going to do 3 webinars. Okay, I might have just done 3 webinars. Maybe that's what I did and I performed as I expected. Another potential outcome would be, well, you are succeeding, but not much is expected. You know what? Actually, I got really busy. I had a big project on and I only did 2 webinars for my training program. Okay, so I am succeeding. I am doing a good job, but not quite what I expected because I had this other project that came up that took a lot of my time. Okay. Another thing could be, oh, you're completely failing. I did 0 webinars. All right. That might be another outcome that's possible. It doesn't mean that that's bad. It's just like, well, I had this other thing that came up and actually it was way more important, or it was way more impactful, or was a better way to reach people I'm trying to impact than running 3 webinars. So actually I've run 0 webinars. Okay. And that is a possible outcome. Or maybe I tried and no one came. I did a whole campaign. I tried to get people to come and no one came to my webinar. Okay, so that's another reason I could be completely failing, is like I tried and it didn't work. Okay, that's fine. It's not good. It's not bad. It just is. Okay, we're not making any judgments on that. These are just different possible outcomes. Okay. Or you're wildly outperforming what you thought you'd achieve. Okay, my goal was to do 3 webinars, but actually I ended up doing 20, or I ended up doing 4, or I ended up doing 10. Okay, so what I thought I was going to do actually became way more important. It got maybe funding that it didn't have, that I didn't expect to have, and actually was able to do a lot more than I expected. Okay, so these are 4 just examples of different possibilities that you can have when you have a set of performance guesses. And so when you're doing kind of your data, these are important to just pay attention to, because here, succeeding as expected or succeeding but not quite as much as expected, maybe that's kind of middle of the road. But completely failing or wildly outperforming, hey, we might want to highlight that in our data. So understanding where you might sit inside of this kind of expected outcome framework is really helpful, because, hey, if you said you were going to reach 1,000 people and you ended up reaching 100,000 people, sure, you're wildly outperforming what you expected, but why? And then people can ask those questions. So understanding what your performance guesses are and where you sit on the outcome based on that is really helpful for kind of telling the story of what your data is telling you. And speaking about story, a lot of what data is actually about communicating a story. Okay, so often what we're doing, we're humans, we respond to stories, we like storytelling. What we're doing is we're doing a communication story, and I would say we could call this a formula. So I was trying to put it in a formula framework. So what would that kind of framework be if you're trying to tell a story with data? Now, first of all, I think when you're talking about data, you need to give a little bit of context. And what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be working on some analysis for a report. If I kind of come over here. So this is my example of a report that I've done in Excel. And I'll be helping you kind of do some of the analysis today around this. Okay. And so what we might first want to do is give some context. Now, this isn't much context, but we've got a title, we've got a project number, we've got a date. I want to add like a background section. So I could add maybe a section in here that I start with background, or in here where I give some background. But here, okay, baseline demographics. Okay, I just want to give some context. What are we actually kind of dealing with? Okay, so this is kind of where you start. Then we kind of get to the next part. And what I would say is, this is where you kind of want to connect it to people emotionally. You tell a personal story. Now, sometimes for some donors, they're not as interested in personal stories. But for most people that are reading, They want to hear some sort of story that will help them understand your impact in a very human way. So take this child who is part of our sports program. Maybe this is his name, or maybe we've changed his name to protect his privacy. But this is what his home life was like. He participated in our program, and this is what his confidence is how his confidence has developed, and what his academic scores have happened just because he participated in our sports program. Okay, so you're telling a personal story so that somebody can take your program and your performance guesses and put it into like a real world understandable framework in their brain. Now they kind of get what you do. Now what you want to do is add in some data. Okay, because the next question that people are going to ask when you tell them that personal story, like, okay, nice to hear about John or James or whatever this teenager is called, but how common was that? Like, are all the people you work with like John, or are only some of them? And like, is it only 2%? Like, was he like an outlier, and only 2% of people you work with are like that? So now you want to add some data to generalize it. So John is just like 50% of the kids we work with, comes from this type of background or that type of background and struggles with confidence and academic scores. Okay, we know 50% now are like John. So that helps me as a reader understand it. And, he succeeded in doing this, 90% of the kids that we work with end up having results that look like John's. They started at 50% and then they get to 90%. Okay, great. That then just helps them understand that data in a really personal way. Okay, we understand what John is like. Now what we're trying to do is understand how common is John, how in your kind of demographic that you work with. Okay, perfect. Hopefully that makes sense. Does that, any questions? If this doesn't make sense, drop it into the chat or just say like, yes, this makes 100% sense. I get this. Give me a yes if you're with me so far. Does that make sense in terms of storytelling and like how data is used with some sort of like relatable experience? Yeah. Okay, good. I've got a few yeses. That's good. If I'm going too fast or if you don't understand, just ping me and I'll try to slow down. I have been reminded that sometimes I get excited and I speak too quickly. So perfect. The next thing that I would kind of say in your storytelling or your communications formula is to say, so what? So like, what's the next step? Okay, we get that this is the personal story. We get that this is the context. We get how generalized this story is. So now what? So now we would like you to partner with us again next year because we'd like to expand this program to 100 kids rather than 25 kids. Okay, great. Or, hey, we have run this sports program with teenagers, but we'd like to also go into the primary school and run it with younger children as well, because we think if we work with younger kids, we have a better chance of changing kind of further outcomes. Okay, great. So what is the point? What do you want them? How do you want them to engage? It's the ask, it's the request, it's, the vulnerable part of it where we say, this is, thank you very much. This is what's been made possible by your support so far. This is now what we'd like. And this could be internal as well. Thank you, dear manager, for supporting me to do this work. This is what I've done. This is my personal story. This is how generalizable that is. I would now like you to support me to do this next thing. Okay. This is not just to an external donor. Then you have continued collaboration. And this is, this could be for anything. You want a promotion at work, you could probably use this formula, right? Give some context, give your own personal story with some data to generalize it, and suggest some next steps and see what happens. I'm not an advisor on promotions, but this is a kind of basic generic formula that shows you what data or how to put data into communications. It's not the whole point. It's just one part of your entire story, one part of your whole communications. There's a really good book. Oh yeah, I do have it up there. Look, I'll even grab it. At least I thought this was a really good book. It's called Talk Like TED. And I don't know if anyone has ever seen like TED Talks or anything like that. Really great presentations. But they have a whole section, and I read this a long time ago, but it's just stuck with me. it's not even the title of one of the chapters, but it basically is like tell a really great story and then insert a little bit of data. And then tell a really great story and then insert a little bit of data. And so they use examples of TED Talkers, which are some of the best presenters and storytellers in the world. They do amazing presentations. But he analyzes, or they analyze, I don't even know if this is a woman or a man, but anyway, they analyze how does data play a part in those presentations. So really, really good. Again, this isn't from that, but all of these influences, I can recommend that anyway. It's probably quite old now. I don't even know how old it is. It doesn't matter. I can probably carry on and you're not interested. 2014, like it's an old book. It's not like new. But I just remember kind of reading that and thinking, yeah, that really does ring true, I think. Okay, so now if you haven't downloaded that spreadsheet, now is the right time. I'll just grab that link again. So if you haven't downloaded the spreadsheet, feel free to go grab the spreadsheet. What we're going to do now is we're going to do a deep dive. We're actually going to do some Excel analysis together, okay? While you're grabbing that, or if you already have, that's great. While you're grabbing that, I'm just going to give you a little bit of a background on how we're kind of going to do this case study. So the case study is that Lifeline NGO, which is a fake NGO, my friends. This is not real. If there really is an NGO called Lifeline out there, please let me know. I'll try to change the name. But anyway, Lifeline NGO has delivered livelihood training to 300 youth across 3 informal settlements this year. Okay, they've collected participant data, gender, age, disabilities, education status, mindset, pre and post training employment status, and monthly income. Okay, so we've got all of this data. This is our context. The donor for this program is a philanthropic trust. They've committed 50% of co-funding. They want to find a scalable solution that will bring exponential increase in youth self-determination and employment, driving down poverty. Efficiency, entrepreneurship, and value for money are all drivers for them. They see philanthropy as an investment, and they want to create systemic change. Okay, so this is quite a realistic case study. This is not a real live case study, so that we can kind of work with fake data and do it all out in the open together. Okay, so that is, we're going to try to measure the impact of that program. And to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to review our performance guesses, the indicators we thought we would have. We're going to design our outcome report right from the beginning so we know what data to collect. Then we're going to design our data collection tools and collect data. And then we're going to take that data, structure it, analyze it, and present it. So that's generally the approach that you're going to take when you've got some sort of report or presentation, some analysis and visualization to do. Okay, so this is kind of an overall approach to that analysis. So you start with the end in mind, right? Start with your design. So things we're going to want to know are performance guesses, total participants trained, percent employed before versus after, top kind of settlement by improvement. Maybe you've run different approaches in each settlement. Gender disaggregation. So a lot of donors will ask for, we want your numbers, but we want them by male and female, so split apart. So it just adds a little bit of complexity there. Monthly income before and after. Some donors, so philanthropic trust, they might have more of an impact investment or business background. So they might want to see like some sort of a return on investment calculation. Sustainability, some note on sustainability and how do we prove that. Contributing factors, so how could this scale to other settlements, regions, or countries? And then what didn't work. So maybe they want to see some innovation and how that worked. I see a comment here. Streaming from the islands, was just lucky to get network at an elevated spot. I'm not able to get in the participatory activities as I'm using my phone. I don't know how I can be helped. Don't worry at all. If you can't download that, that's not a problem. I'm going to do it on screen so you can just watch me, and that is totally fine. The download is just if you want to try this along with me. But there's no pressure to at all. It's just for those of you who want to try that. But don't worry, it's totally fine. And welcome, Daniel. So good to have you here. Okay. We have got 2 data sets. We've got baseline and an end line. Okay. So the baseline data has come in, the end line data has come in, okay? And some people, now maybe not you, but a lot of people look at a big spreadsheet like that and their brains go, ah, I have a whole spreadsheet. I don't know what to do with it. It just is a little bit scary because you're just hit with kind of that blank page of where do I start, okay? And when your brain does that, and you just close your Excel sheet again and go do something else because it might be easier. But what I wanted to do today is kind of give you 7 really basic steps that if you're facing a situation where you need to do some analysis, you can just work through these 7 steps and just do this. And then at the end of it, you'll probably know a little bit more what you want to do. Okay. So this is kind of your blank page, brain is freaking out scenario. What do you do? How do I start some analysis? So the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to describe our number data with statistics. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come over to my baseline data and I'm going to duplicate it. So I'm going to move or copy, create a copy, and I'm going to move it over here. And I'm going to call this my analysis, or the start of my analysis at least, is my baseline analysis. And so I now have a copy. My raw data is still sitting there and I'm not going to touch my raw data. I am always so scared that I'm going to like delete my raw data. And I know I'm not the only person in life who's scared that I'm going to wreck my raw data. So I just leave it like that so I can come back to it and get it again if I need to, if I screw everything up. Okay. So I've made a copy. I'm now on my baseline analysis. This is my copy duplicate page. And I want to do the first thing. So the very first thing I'm going to do in my view tab, I'm going to freeze the top row so that as I scroll, I always know that these are my headers, because I always get to the bottom and I'm like, oh, what column am I on? I can't remember. So I'm just going to do that first. Let me also just make this whole page a little bit bigger, so it's easier for all of you to see. Okay, so there's our data. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to start with statistics. So I'm going to insert another column over here, and I'm going to call this maybe my statistics column, okay? Now, I don't need to do statistics on each row. I'm going to come all the way down to the bottom, and I'm going to run some aggregation statistics at the very bottom of my data set, okay? I know you could do this at the top, at the bottom, but for sake of today, what I'm going to do is the bottom. Okay, in the chat, can you give me some examples of like, what are some descriptive statistics that we could do on a data set? What are some formulas we could run in Excel? Think back to like when you were in school and you had to do some statistics. What were some of those formulas? Mean, yay, that's great. So our mean is a good one. Mean is also called an average. Okay, that's what probably most of us call it, the average number of people. Minimum and maximum, 100%. Yeah, minimum, maximum. Medium. Okay, so what we often would call that is a median. So a median is another kind of tendency towards the center. Yeah, so average and median, we can compare those and it will tell us some different things. Yeah, any other ideas? The median's kind of your middle number if you put everything in a row. Standard deviation, yeah, that's very statistical and probably something that we can't use very easily, but yeah, that is possible. What's another one that's a little bit more common? That might be, any ideas? Mode, again, it is a statistic. Yep, you can do mode. Amount, I like that one. Yeah, so the other word that I would use for amount in kind of two would be a count or a sum. So we can count things or we can sum them up. Yeah. Total sum. Yeah. And Raneem gave that. Perfect. Let's go with this list. Yes, there are some others and I am leaving some out because what I'm trying to do is just give the most commonly understandable ones here. Range. Yeah. So hopefully within minimum, maximum, we got to find the min, max, the range. Those are kind of probably the ones that people most understand most easily. So in here, what I'm not trying to do, I'm not trying to do your hardcore statistics. we're just going to do some statistics that most people understand if they've never taken a statistics course. They kind of understand the word average or sum or count, okay? So what we can do, I'm actually going to start with count because that is probably one of the easiest things to start with, and you can count lots of things. So if I say equals count, I'm going to do a formula, and then I'm going to open up with a bracket, and I'm going to say, I want you to count, and I'm clicking and dragging this entire row of data. I'm not including the header, so I'm just highlighting the data, and I'm going to press enter, and it says 0. There's 0 data, which is wrong, right? That is not right because I can see that there's 180 participants there. So what we want to do is when we do a count formula in Excel, it isn't just count, it's count A. And the way I remember this is count my ABCs. So it's not just counting numbers, it's counting letters. So when I press enter again, I've got 180. So it's now telling me I have 180 somethings in all of those cells that I just highlighted. Now, if I click and drag that under all of these different columns, I can actually see that all of my data is there. Okay, someone did a really good job of collecting this data, no missing data. What's more common is you probably have some missing data somewhere, okay? And you probably are looking at your data set and going, most of my data is there, but I have some missing values. Or you have some questions that are answered by some people and other questions that are answered by other people, in which case you might only have 90 here and 90 there, okay? What you're doing with count is you're just trying to understand how many numbers are in those columns, okay? Or how many pieces of text. The next thing you might want to do is a sum, okay? So sum is another kind of way to do this. So we are going to highlight that again, and I'm going to sum that up. Now, this makes sense. You really can't sum. You can count letters, but you can't sum up numbers, right? So if we drag this over, some things we can sum and some things we can't. It doesn't make sense to sum text. It doesn't really make sense to sum a date. So I'm just going to delete that. We have summed ones and zeros. We know that there are 33 probably employed people. Okay, great. We can sum up all of the monthly incomes. Okay, so we know that everyone altogether makes almost $10,000 in a month if everyone was pooling all their money. Okay, great. Mindset score, that's a number, so we could sum it. These don't make sense. These don't make sense. Summing ages, I don't know that that makes sense. Probably doesn't make sense if I delete it. Okay, I don't know that that is going to help me overall. Okay, the other thing we can do is average. Okay, so equals average. And again, we're just trying to get that whole column, and we're averaging. Now, again, we can't average text, so it's going to give us some errors, right? That's okay. We're just going to drag that under, and anywhere it gives me an error, I'm just going to delete it, right? Delete, delete, delete. But now I can see an average date. So an average date will kind of be the middle date of all of your dates, which is fine. So I'm going to turn that into a date. Great. So I can see that the kind of middle date, the average date was the 23rd of January. The average response was 0.18. The monthly income, the average monthly income, that's probably one of the most important things there, is 55. Average mindset score was 3. Average age was 23. So those things make sense. And now all of a sudden, we're understanding the demographics a little bit better. Oh, okay, if this is the average income, this is the average mindset score, this is the average age. Perfect. Okay, I can kind of see that. The other thing we can do is our mins and max. So min equals min, and then we're grabbing all of those data set rows. That's fine for min. And again, zeros, we can just delete. Those we can't take a minimum of our text values. We can put this one as a date again. And maximum, we can probably just say equals max. Okay, and then we're taking that again. Perfect. And that's our max. We drag that over. And finally, we have median. So median, whoops, I can delete those zeros here. So our max is 1. Oh, this was a 0. This was a true 0. Delete, and delete those. Okay, so we know our minimum age was 18, our max was 28. And then median, again, median isn't super well understood, but sometimes it can help you understand your average a little bit better. So if I do median equals median, and I take this one over. Median is your middle number. So if we lined all of the results up in order from 0 to whatever, then median is kind of your middle number. So what is the middle value out of all your values? So if we make these dates here, our median date is 23rd of January. Our median monthly income was 35, which is actually quite different than the average of 55, which means we probably have a few quite high values that are skewing it off to that side. 3 and 3 as our median and average are bang on. They're very similar. So that's probably the average is probably a really good kind of idea, gives us a really good idea of what the middle is. 23 and 22.9, almost bang on. So that's great. So your median just can help you interpret your average a little bit. But that's where I would start, is you start with some very basic statistics. Maybe you just don't want to do a count in the beginning, but start just by counting things and taking averages. And that's okay. That's a great place to start. The next thing that we're going to do in our very easy analysis approach is to say, well, what are all the possible answers in one column? Because what you can see here is we've got some good kind of basic statistics on our number columns, but in our columns where we have text, we don't have much insight yet, okay? So who here has used a pivot table before? If you've used a pivot table, I want you to say yes. If you have never used a pivot table, I want you to say no, or if you're not really comfortable. So Irina has, Raneem has, anyone who hasn't, tell me no, that's fine. Often, yes, yes. Okay, lots of pivots here. Perfect. Anyone who hasn't? Okay, for those of you who have, good. What we're going to do is we're going to break this down into different types of pivots, okay? So the first thing that we're going to do, and if you're working with someone who's never used a pivot table before, okay? So because a lot of you have, here's a good way to kind of introduce someone who hasn't to pivot tables, okay? So the first thing we're going to do, obviously, is we're going to take our whole data set, and I'm going to insert a pivot table, okay? Now, normally you put it on a new page. I'm actually going to put it just over here to the right of my data, okay? And what I'm going to do, I'm going to say, okay. What I'm going to do is make a one-column pivot, okay? So I'm going to take this whole data set, and you can see that these are all of the column names, is I'm going to say, all right, in here, I've got some text values in, let's say, my survey date, okay? And I'm going to put survey date into rows, okay? And all it's going to do as a pivot table, as a one-column pivot, is it's just going to tell me what are all the different values that show up in that data set, okay? 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, in terms of the dates that are in that column. Perfect. That's all I'm trying to do at this point, is try to find one column that summarizes all the different possibilities in that column. So what about if we go to employed, the employed column? Whoops, not some. Taking it to the rows, and it's just going to say, well, there are only zeros and ones in that column. Perfect. So all we're doing with the one column pivot is understanding what are all the different possibilities. So there's even some of our number ones. So there's all the different possibilities of monthly income. Okay. Okay. That's a great big one. Yeah. What about our settlements? Okay. Well, we can see there are 3 different settlements. Okay. Alpha, beta, and gamma. One column pivots, just summarizing. Okay. And if you've never used a pivot table before, this is the thing that's really easy, right? All I'm trying to do at this point is just see what are all the possible answers or responses that are included in that column. And this just gives us a summary, okay? So once you've done that, then the next thing you're going to do is we're going to say, well, for some of these columns, we want to categorize them, okay? So if I was looking at this, I can see zeros and ones. Now, zeros and ones don't make a lot of sense. So what I would then do is say, I want not just a 0 and 1 employed column. I want an employment category. Okay. Either they're employed or unemployed, not 0 and 1, because a lot of people who aren't numbers people, they don't know what you mean by 0 and 1. Okay. So I'm going to make an if statement equals if. Okay. So if this in my employment column is if this E2 equals 0, then, so we put a comma, that means then, and then value if true. Well, the value if true is in quote marks, I'm going to say unemployed. So if it's a 0, it actually means unemployed. Otherwise, okay, or else, that's going to be my second comma. Then I'm going to put in quotes, it actually means employed, okay? So if it's 0, it means unemployed. Otherwise, we know it's a 1, and that means they're employed. Okay, so I enter that. And now I can just double click and that will copy down. So now I just have a column of unemployed or employed. Okay, and that is my if statement. Now I don't need them down here. So this is now part of my data set, my new data set that I'm doing analysis on. So as you're going through, you're thinking, okay, is there anything else I need to categorize? Okay, so I'm going to insert another one. What about where we have monthly income? Okay, so monthly income category. Okay, monthly income perfect. Now I need something that's not just if it's 1, then this, otherwise it's this. Okay, it's not just a single if statement, but what if I want to do kind of ranges? So if it's under 25, then it's really low. If it's kind of 25 to 35, then it's pretty low. If it's 35 to 45, then it's medium low. Okay, so what if I have different categories? So in that case, I'm going to make an ifs statement. So this is an if, this is an ifs. So I have multiple ifs, okay? So ifs and then open bracket. And we're going to say ifs monthly income, okay? So if F2 is less than 25, then, okay, value if this is true, I'm going to say this is less than 25, okay? Okay, otherwise, okay, another comma. Now it's going to say logical test 2. Now I'm going to just press Alt-Enter so I can go to a new line. Okay, well, if F2, so it's checked it if it's under 25. If it's not under 25, if it's over 25, it's going to go to the next line, okay? So if F2 is less than 35, then we're going to say, well, it's 25 to 35, okay? And that's now our category, comma. Now we're going to go to the third logical test. F2, if it's less than 45, then say, well, now it's 35 to 45, okay? Otherwise, go to the next line. If F2 is less than 55, then we're going to say 45 to 55. Okay, now you can see this could go on for lots of categories, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut away some of these categories. If F2 is now less than 100, then we're going to say, okay, it's 55 to 100. Or else, let's say if F2 is greater than or equal to 100, then we'll say greater than or equal to 100. Right. And now I can close that off. I've covered all eventualities. I'm going to press enter, and now it's just going to give me a category. Now you could do this with lots of things. You don't have to be using income for categories, but look at the way that formula is constructed, and we're then saying, okay, this is when we have lots of different categories. So we're categorizing that data. So either you can categorize it with just if, else, okay, 2 options, or you can categorize it with lots of different options, and that's a super simple way to do that. So we used to have like nested if statements. Now we can just use ifs. Perfect. Who has ever used the ifs statement before, or ifs formula? Anyone? Or do you usually use like nested if statements? I think nested if might be the more common ones. Use if, yeah. That's good. Anyone else? Do you use if or ifs? No, usually if. Yeah. So this is what I would have always used is just if, nested if. And ifs is a newer formula. So we can do it. It's quite fun, a little bit easier than our old school if and nested if statements. Great. So this is kind of your categorization. So that's kind of your next stage of categories. Then what we're going to do is we're going to count by category. Now we're going back to our pivot tables and we're going to add a new column. Okay. So we're back at our pivot tables here. Oh, they're down here somewhere. Great. I want to look at these dates and I'm going to say, all right, now I want to know, well, how often does each of these values show up in that column? So we know that these are all the possible values in the column. Now, how often do they show up? So what I'm going to do, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come and grab something that's unique. So this participant ID in here, this is a unique number. I'm going to copy this or pull this participant ID down into my values. And all it's going to do is it's going to count how many times for each of those unique values, or how many for each of these unique dates, how many times or how many unique IDs showed up with that date, right? So I know that on the 23rd of January, 33 interviews were done. Okay. On the 24th of January, 42 were done. On the 27th of January, 13 were done. Perfect. So all we're doing here is we're just counting, right? So I can pull in participant ID. I'm just counting how many times or how many people, how many unique IDs had a 0 next to them for employed or unemployed. How many had a 1 next to them for unemployed or employed. Perfect. Okay. And you can also, if we kind of copied this here, we've got alpha, beta, and gamma. How many people live in here in each of these settlements? How many people are we reaching? We've now got that count. We can also change out, instead of settlement, I want that employment category, right? So employment category doesn't show up because it was a new column we added. So how do we add new columns into our pivot table? So if I'm going to come up here to pivot table analyze, I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to change the data source. And right now it's only capturing up to column M. So I'm going to say, oh, I want to go all the way to column O. So I'm just going to come over here and whoops, we're going to say this is now to column O. No, it's not going to let me. Perfect. I'm just going to capture this whole thing. Okay. And that is my whole data set there. Okay. And now we can see in the pivot table that we're trying to do over here, we now see we have the option of employment category and monthly income category. So I'm going to get rid of settlement and I'm going to pull my monthly income category down here. And now we're counting by monthly income category. Perfect. Great. So that's where you're going from your 1 column pivot to your 2 column pivots. All we're doing is just counting. Okay. Now, the next thing you might think of when you see that kind of summary table in a pivot is, well, yeah, I want to, and let me get rid of this page 1 in the background. That's annoying. I want to see this as a percentage. I don't want to see it as a count. Because sometimes if I'm looking at this table, I see 27s and 65s and 38s and whatever, and it doesn't make sense right away which one is the biggest or the most important to pay attention to. So what I'm going to do in here is I can come over to count of participants, and there's a little arrow, and I'm going to click on that arrow, and I'm going to go to value field settings, okay? And if we come over here to show value as, it says no calculation, it's just doing a count, okay? Perfect. Instead of that, I'm going to say, well, give me a % of the grand total, okay? So instead of showing me just the count, I now want to see this as a percentage of everything and say, okay. And now I can see, oh, this is 36%, 15, 21%, 10, 12, 5%. Perfect. Now we can see, oh, this is the biggest category here. And this is the second biggest. And this is the third biggest and the fourth and the fifth. Okay, perfect. Great. So now I can see that as a percentage. So I can do that here. What percentage of my participants are in each of the different settlements? I just come here, go to value field settings, show values as a % of grand total. Okay. And now I can see that as a percentage rather than just a count. Now you might be thinking, yeah, but I also want to see the count and the percentage, which we can do as well. And I'm just going to quickly show you how to do that. Is you can pull that participant ID a second time into the same pivot table. And now you can see this is the count and this is the percentage. So it's the same column two times, but we're just seeing it as a different kind of final presentation of that. So percentages or just a straight count, okay? So that would kind of be your next step, is make sure you can see the count and then that value as a percentage, if that's kind of what you need to see for your final. Then we're only 2 steps away, okay? The next one is doing some quick visuals. Now that you have your pivot tables set up in this nice formatted way, all you have to do is insert and click on, say, a bar chart, and it automatically creates a nice little bar chart for you. Okay, the way that we're categorizing this. So it's giving us all our different options down here, and it's showing what percentage or what count, depending on what you're showing here. Okay, the other thing we could do is, unemployed and employed. So maybe instead of zeros and ones, I actually update this to my data source to O. Okay, I can now see my employment category, so I can just see now employed and unemployed. Okay, so now I've got my unemployed and employed people. Maybe I want to see this as a bar chart. Same thing, or a pie chart, sorry. Insert, go to a pie chart. And now I can see a nice little pie chart of what percentage is employed and unemployed. And there are lots of different things that we can kind of see and do once we have that. I want to see my data labels, and maybe I want to turn those data labels white and what have you. We can do lots of things with the visuals once we have them. But really what we're doing is we're just going through quickly. I'm going through, I'm inserting a chart, and I just want a very quick chart to visualize each one of my little summary tables. So all you're doing in this stage of the analysis is you're going through each column in your data set, do a little summary pivot table on it and a little visual. And you're going to start to see lots of kind of results coming out of your data. And the final step that I would say when you're just initially exploring that data, what we're doing right now is crosstabs and filters. So this is where you can say, all right, I want to take this date, okay, pivot, and I'm going to paste it over here. But I want to see how many females we interviewed or males we interviewed on each of these dates. So I don't just want the date, I also want my gender breakdown. So I'm going to take my gender and I'm going to pull it over into columns, okay? And in my pivot table, I then can see how many females, how many males, and how many people total, okay? And same thing, we can always kind of come to count of participants and say, well, actually I want to see this as a percentage. Fine. Okay, great. But actually, 4% and 6%, 4% female, 6% male. What this is doing is it's taking the percentage out of 180 people. Sometimes what you want to see is not the percentage of the whole total. The percentage that you'd like to see is what percentage were female on this date? What percentage were male on this date? And that's actually a percentage of the row total. Okay, so not only can we do grand total, but we could say, well, I want to show the values as a percentage of the row total. Okay, and we can see that. So now we can see on the 20th, we had 42% that were female, 57% that were male. Perfect. So hopefully that's helpful in just thinking through really, really quickly, how do I go from a blank data set to some initial exploration so I know exactly what data is in that data set, okay? The other thing you could do, you could combine your baseline and your end line together and do this analysis. Your pivot tables, split it apart instead of by male and female, by before and after, that kind of thing. But what you're doing in both your baseline and your end line exploration stage in your data analysis is going through and making little pivot tables, little summaries, and your little visualizations on all of your different data. So here's one that I did before where I've visualized every single column in my data. So I really understand what's in my data set. I go to present this, somebody asks a question about my data and I go, I already know the answer because I really know what's in my data. I've gone through it really carefully, Okay. So I know what's in my data. Then what you're going to do is you're going to pull in all of those performance guesses, your indicators. You're going to copy them in, and then I'm going to say total participants trained. I'm going to make a little summary table here. I'm going to say, well, this is how many were registered in my baseline. This is how many I actually trained for my end line. And percent completed is actually 83% of all the students that we registered in the beginning actually completed the training. Perfect. Now we have a little summary here. So what I call this is my summary table. So once I've gone through and I've explored all my data, I really understand it, I know it, then I'm going through and just setting up these little summary tables for each one of my indicators, okay? Now, from there, we want to visualize. Now, we've done some quick visualizations, but what I wanted to do for you is give you an overview of, well, what are the different visualizations that I can choose from before I get to my end report, okay? Now, you have been with me an hour and a half, guys. So what I want to give you is a little cheat sheet so you can actually download this, okay? This is my data visualization playbook. It's just a PDF, okay? I've just put the link in the chat. It's a PDF that when you download this, will give you this PDF here. I downloaded this already, okay? And it just has, you know, some of these examples you can fill out. You can do that little brainstorm with yourself. What are some of the emotional drivers? We talked about that. What's my data storytelling formula? What am I kind of looking for? Reminding you, like, these are the outcomes that are possible. And then what's my 7-step analysis approach and 7 steps for my initial data exploration, okay? So think about those really quickly. And now what I'm doing is saying, okay, well, what are the different visualizations I can choose from? And when would I use the different visualizations, okay? So this is really helpful if you're kind of then saying, right, what visualization do I want to use, okay? So what I would recommend is, and I'm going to show you how to do this really quickly, total participants trained. This is called a KPI card or a metric card, where you put your performance guess or your indicator, you want to highlight it at the top of your report. If I come over here to my report, you can see I've just put a series of KPI cards right at the top, 149 people trained, 25% change in employment, $26 average monthly income increase. These are my highlights, right? They're the big numbers that I want to talk about at the kind of beginning of my report. So if I'm doing that, okay, I'm going to show you. It's really fun, actually. I didn't, you know, not everyone knows that you can do this. But anyway, you put in, I didn't always know we could do this. We put in a shape, yeah? Now, you know that if I double click in a shape, I can type some text in there, yeah? So I could put in, if I want to, 149 people trained, okay? Great. But what if I want that actually linked up to some data instead of just some text that I've just written in there? So instead of writing text, I'm going to come up to the formula bar and I'm actually going to say equals, okay? I'm going to come over to my summary and I want to say, this is my total people trained was 149 from that initial summary table. Enter, okay? It's actually put 149 in there. You can't see it yet. Oops, I'm going to say the text needs to be white and we're going to make the text bigger. And there's 149. And we've actually turned a shape into a KPI card. Okay, so fun trick, really easy. Even if you're not into like making charts or everything, everybody can do this, right? Everybody can make a KPI card. You can kind of do a highlight section, something like this in your reports. Perfect. Another thing that you might want to do would be a little table or summary table. So this is when you need to show exact numbers and you've got a comparison that's quite small, really good for small data sets. You don't want too much data. Sometimes you do. This is a rule that you can break all the time. Sometimes you just want really detailed information and people want to know the exact number. They don't want it visualized. Perfect. That's kind of when you want to use that. Pie chart is usually when you have 2 categories and the total adds up to 100. So when we did percentage of people employed and unemployed, you know, that is a great example. We only have 2 categories and it adds up to 100%. Unemployed plus employed equals 100%. Okay, so that is a great time when you would want to use a pie chart. If you've got like more than 2 categories, usually I would say go to a bar chart because it's easier for your brain to understand and compare those different values. But a bar chart, when you're comparing two or more categories, or you can cluster them like this, where you've got like a before and after, before and after, before and after. I've also used kind of colors. So my light pink here is for before, and my dark pink is for my after. So I'm using color with my visual to tell people what's going on in my chart, okay? So that's where you're comparing multiple groups. You can also have a line chart. Line charts are really good when you're showing change over time or you're showing trends. So ideally, for your monitoring or progress tracking, seasonality, that kind of thing, or you're showing distribution. So I've got here maybe my mindset scores from before or after. And I'm not just showing the average mindset score. I'm showing that actually there were lots of mindset scores all along the way, but actually you can see how before was a little bit lower and after was a little bit higher. This is also good for showing, if you have any extreme outliers, yeah, is when you show everything. And finally, some sort of infographic would be another possibility. So in my report, down at the bottom, I've just included a section that my visualization is all infographic. And that's really good for, if you've got a process to show or something where you're trying to show movement or a program or progress, steps to follow. So we had this average cost per participant, then we increased the annual income per participant. So we end up with a 1.3 year break-even point. So it's something where you can logically take people through a process of like, how did I get to this result? Okay. So if you're thinking about an infographic, you're trying to tell a story, a process, or a concept. Okay. So all of these are really beginner level visualization. So all of you on the call for sure will be able to do all of these and then use color, try to use color appropriately. If we go to tips for visualization, when you're doing your visualizations, try not to make anything too complex because what you're trying to get is clarity. When I show this to somebody, they understand what the chart is about, okay? To do that, try to use simple charts. So don't try to like cram lots of stuff in. You want to take lots of stuff out. So if you look at my report here, you can see in this, I haven't got like lots of grid lines showing. I do have axes, titles, and values because I need them for somebody to understand what's going on here. But in here, I don't have any axes over here. I don't have any numbers. I just have colors that show before and after. And my data labels are right on the chart itself, okay? So you can see here that I've taken out legends, I've taken out axes and grid lines and everything. I'm showing the minimum possible elements on that chart. I'm using a really, really standard color palette, okay? It's purple. I mean, it's, purple is crazy, right? We've got purple, but it's not all over the place. It's the same. It's consistent. So it's not that I have purples and greens and blues and yellows and reds. It's that everything's purple. So it's, you're not caught out by something. Now, if all of a sudden I wanted to present something and say, this, I want orange, okay? All of a sudden you're going to go, why is that orange, right? So color you can use really, really strategically. So you can pull people's eyes into a certain value based on color. But you want to use that some simple color palette. Blue often means water. So just remember that. If you're kind of talking about water, don't use like red. It's water. You can use blue. Red often means bad, warning. Okay. Amber can also mean that. So pay attention to how you're using kind of danger colors. Green often is your good progress color or can be like environmental or grass, land. If you're doing maps and you want to show grass or land, that's green. Dark saturated color or a really different color is going to draw your eyes. So in this, all I've used in my end line color, I've always used the darker color because actually what I want the eye to be drawn into is the end line. Okay. And then we have other strategies to kind of fade other information into the background. So you can use gray as like a color where people don't really pay attention to gray that much. They think, oh, it's not important. So gray is another strategic color you can use if the data isn't like there's nothing stand out about it. You want to present it, but it's not really that important. You don't want to pull people's eyes towards it. Use the 10-second rule. So put something in front of somebody. If they can't understand the graph in 10 seconds, like go away and work on it. Often it's really easy for you to understand your own chart So use other people as testers. And then what I would recommend is use other good journalistic websites for inspiration. So one thing I do when I'm scrolling social media, like I might be relaxing at night, every once in a while, I'm going to watch a tutorial on Excel or on Power BI or on data analysis or something. Because then the algorithm knows, oh, she's actually kind of interested in that. So every once in a while, we're going to give her a cool new video about Excel. Great. That kind of teaches your social media or your algorithm that you like to know things about data. Okay. Another thing is to check out. So I really love the BBC or The Economist. Look at the kind of charts and graphs that they produce. They're really great. They're simple. They're straightforward. They use a kind of a standard color template. And I think we can learn a lot from usually journalistic websites to kind of they're really good at communicating with people. They're good at telling stories. So I like to use those as inspiration, and I would recommend that. For more advanced visualizations, now I teach a course on kind of Excel essentials, and we do more advanced visualizations in that course. And I think it's really important for humanitarians to have these at their fingertips. But I've given you this as at least an overview in your cheat sheet. If I just look at this here normally, into 100% here. Some other types would be a cluster column chart. This is like if your numbers don't add all up to 100%. So if you're using like a multiple choice where people can select more than one, your whole data set doesn't add up to 100. So you can use kind of a bar chart for that. This would be like a gauge or progress chart where it's kind of showing how far along you are. Or this is a fun one where we did custom spacing. So we've actually put one bar right over the top of another bar. We're showing before and after data, but the before data is actually really light blue and it's sitting behind the after data. So really what we're doing is we're presenting the after data, but if you wanted to talk about the before data, it is there, but it kind of just looks like a shadow. So it's not overpowering, or it's not bringing the eye to that, okay? Here's one, a pyramid chart. So this would be where you want to compare maybe male and female. So you're doing like a population pyramid. So you're comparing two opposing sides. One's going on the positive axis, one's going on the negative axis. Here's a line chart where actually what we're doing, there's nothing special about a line chart, but what we're doing here is we're controlling and we're making custom labels. So I've got other things going on where it's not giving the label of that data, it's actually giving another label that I've customized, okay? And so this here, this average monthly underspend here, that's actually a point on my chart and it's got a custom label. Great. So there's some hacks that you can do for custom labeling. This is a really good one to know if you do surveys and survey data. This is called a Likert chart. So you know those questions you ask where you're like, strongly disagree, neutral, agree, strongly agree. So that's how we can kind of present Likert data. So that's a more intermediate to advanced visualization, just understanding how to set that up. So it's not like kind of right out of the box. You have to customize it. But that's a really good one to kind of know how to do. This one is a combo chart. So how do we include a line, like a target line? This was our efficiency target. And this is how the bars are then what we hit for each different car or something. So that's what this visual is all about. But this is when we have two different types of data, or when we're comparing results to a trend line or to a target line. And you can see I've highlighted the red ones that were under target. Oh, we need to pay attention to those. So I've used color to draw the eye. That's the most important part of this chart, okay? Now we need to make a decision. What do we do? Do we need to get these cars serviced? You know, that's kind of where we're focusing there. And finally here, this is again a combo chart, but where I've just thrown everything in. Now, this is a really complicated one. I don't think we should be using this one all the time, but just an example of how complicated we can get. We've got pictures on here. So these images are actually data points. So I'm actually able to use an image on my data point. I've got custom labels. I've got custom error bars. I've got lines. I've got bars. Everything's going on in this chart. So this is where we've got complex KPIs or complex decisions. Here, we're just trying to say, oh, we're trying to keep track of which car needs to go for a service next. Okay. So if you've got a team and they're always trying to make that decision, they're always looking at this chart, they can probably see it and understand it because they're used to looking at it all the time. If I was putting this chart in front of someone who's seeing it for the first time, it might take them more than 10 seconds to understand it. So I'm probably going to split that maybe into a couple different charts. Okay. Hopefully that's really helpful. Also, just a reminder that you can use different presentation types. In here, I've given you an example of, hey, I've done my report in Excel. My charts are all here. It's all in with my data. I just need this to like PDF. I've set up the print view so that when I go to print, it should just print. Oh, no, I haven't even. But it should normally. Oh, no, not selected chart. Why have I selected the chart? I just want to print the whole thing. Print. Yeah, so I've set this up so my print preview will print this on an A4 sheet of paper. It's just 5 pages and it has 1 section per page. I can just PDF that and send it off to my manager. And then when I update the data, I can PDF it again and send the new results off to my manager or something. So you can do something as simple as setting something up in Excel. You could do a Word report or a Google Doc report, an infographic report, pull up something from Canva, which is a great software if you want to do graphic design, create something in PowerPoint. My daughter is like 8 years old and she's just realized that there's such a thing called PowerPoint and she's so excited. She loves to make PowerPoints. We've got Excel, then interactive dashboards. That's a little bit more advanced. Or you can go to like Power BI or Tableau or R or something where you're getting into much more kind of advanced visuals and dashboards, that kind of thing. But all those different kinds of reports I've put in the cheat sheet. So you should have access to that, just to remind yourself. And finally, if you want to try this out for yourself, I've put in a second case study of some project progress. So it would be a completely different way to look at the data, giving you some kind of indicator options, and feel free to play with those data sets and try to set up your own analysis and presentation report based on that. So I'll leave that with you. That was on the download. I'm just going to quickly jump back to my PowerPoint now. We're going to bring this to a close here. So as you kind of, you download this, great. You've come to this webinar. I've kept you all afternoon. And you're thinking, all right, where do I go from here? Because I love this stuff. I love data. Why did you show up today? And I kind of be reminded of this, right? Why did you come to a webinar and spend all afternoon with me talking about data analysis and visualization? Maybe it's a funding thing. Think back to the kind of beginning. Maybe it's a funding thing. Maybe you're looking to develop your own skills, okay? Maybe you've kind of heard the buzz about data analysis. You want to know more. You want to do more, okay? It's all connected. Data isn't just something you do. It's not scary. It's not fun. It's just what we're using to connect impact to funding. It's about the people. It's about driving that impact to people, but we all need more funding. And the ways that you need to use data in your organization and your role your role is to drive that funding. And remember that funders are paying attention to this. They are seeing data as important. So if like this year was already really difficult for funding, okay? We saw the impact of USAID being shut down and proposals have been rejected more this year than they have been in previous years. That probably will only get worse next year, okay? Because this year, at least, we still had some contracts that kept running from the year before. Next year, things are going to get even more competitive. So organizations who are using data well already are the organizations that already kind of have a foot in the door in terms of getting being most competitive for that data. It's not a shoo-in, but what I'm kind of saying is we need to use everything at our disposal to be ready for that competition, okay? But how do we get better at data, okay? Then I have also read this book. Clearly, I like books that have, yeah. Anyway, who, not how. And I loved this. This is challenging because one of the ways I think is, well, how do I do that? How do I do that? How do I do that? And I think most of us think that, ooh, data is important, but how do I get better at data? And I think what I loved about this is this author was like, don't think about how all the time, think about who, okay? And the fact is, and this is a wonderful fact, that in all of our organizations, mine included, we have people that for fun go home in the evenings on the weekends and they open their laptops and they figure out Excel charting and visualizations and they summarize data and they watch tutorials and they download dashboard things and they want to be doing data and they're naturally inclined to it. Okay. And at the Humanitarian Data Academy, that's what we work with. We often work with people that are self-taught, but that naturally love data or that are responsible for it. And we created this place to support the who. Yes, we're showing you how, but we're first of all focused on the who. Who's already doing this really naturally? That's what we'd love to support. We're going to do this. We have 3 different categories of kind of memberships that people participate in the Humanitarian Data Academy. But we kind of drive with this core belief that a local data specialist on your team is the most effective way to drive credibility, right? Someone locally, they understand your context. They are the most important and effective way to drive that credibility. There's usually 7 key skills. Maybe there's 8, maybe there's 6, but these are the things that we currently work on through the Data Academy. First of all, spreadsheets. Understanding spreadsheets is really important as a key skill for that who. Data collection, so doing surveys. Data protection, understanding at least your basic GDPR and how you implement that at the local level, because every country, every context, every organization is different. Dashboards and visualization, so that's Power BI often, or Excel. Mapping, we often have really geographical based programs, right? So we're working around front lines, or we're working around disasters, natural disaster zones, that kind of thing. So mapping can often be really important. Data communications and storytelling, we touched a little bit about on that today. And then I've added the 7th, responsible AI. So that's going to be another really important one moving forward. AI is really great. It opens up lots of doors, but how to use that ethically. Now, I want this easy to be easy for your team, okay? Data kind of sounds complicated to a lot of people, but someone by your side as you do it sounds a little bit more doable. And that's what we try to do at the Humanitarian Data Academy. So the first membership option we have is totally free. And if I escape out of this, I think I can give you this link here. If I just pop this link. Now I need to present that again. Bring it back up on screen. So our 2 most popular courses, and these are free. One is called the Data Class, and that's all about data protection. And one's called the 7 Easy Steps to Kobo Toolbox for Beginners. And that's just if you've never used Kobo Toolbox before, but you really want to know how to set it up. It goes through everything from like setting it up to your phone on your phone to creating your first questionnaire. That's 2 great things that you can jump in, do those for free, carry on learning with me. That's fine. I'd love to see you there. So definitely click that link, go ahead and join in the Data Club. Okay, so that's our first option. The second option is for people who are like, okay, that was great, but I want to carry on learning and I want to go a little bit deeper. And I want to kind of get that breadth. So we have a Getting Started in Kobo Toolbox, which goes a little bit deeper into Kobo Toolbox. That's a course. We have Getting Started in Power BI. And that's, I think, normally like a 250 pound course, and Getting Started in Excel, which we renamed Excel Essentials. So right now, this is called our Getting Started series. We're going to merge this into our Essentials courses, where we see these are kind of the essential courses for humanitarians to have on every local team. And then this one is coming. It's designed. I just haven't delivered it yet. So this one is coming this year, which is exciting. And though this is your skill builder option, this is if you kind of work with data because you work on projects or support, but you're not maybe the data person on your team, but you're a finance person, or you're a M&E assistants, you're new to the team, this is where you would start. So these courses will kind of give you like, this is how all the software works and maybe how it works together, okay? And how do we use Kobo data in Power BI, or how do we do those more advanced Excel visualizations? Okay, great. This is your skill builder membership. And then we have more advanced courses. And this is your Mastering Form Design in Kobo Toolbox, Dashboard Intensive for Power BI, Supercharge your Excel spreadsheets, and Mapping for Impact, which is your QGIS. And this is what we call our specialist membership. These are for the data people. These are for your data specialists, okay, on your team. We're like, yep, I'm self-taught, but I want to do this with other specialists, other data specialists from other organizations, with Jana. And that's kind of our third, that's our higher level membership. Now, at Humanitarian Data Solutions, so we run the Humanitarian Data Academy. We do integrated data consulting, right? So I work with clients and projects. And when I work with projects, that starting price point is usually 10,000 or more, up to 80,000 per year. Okay. So I love this. The projects, my clients, it means I'm always doing data myself. I'm keeping current. I'm integrating with teams and keeping connected. It means I stay connected to real world data applications and what's changing and, how AI is changing things. So I'm not teaching from theory. I am teaching from my practical experience. But the challenge when I'm working on projects that start at 10,000 and go up to 80,000 is often that isn't totally feasible for every team and every organization around the world. So when we've designed these courses and the way we've put the specialist program together is how can we get all of that knowledge into a more affordable or accessible format? So we start with mastering form design. I'm actually going to be running a new cohort of this course. So we teach it live as well. So we have self-paced and live versions of the courses. I'm going to be teaching that live starting in January. So if Kobo Toolbox is something that you're like, right, I need to get a lot better at Kobo Toolbox. You've done the beginning, you've gotten your first data, but you're like, right, my data needs to be way better. We do dirty data basics in module 1, then formulating equations that validate. Okay, so validation in module 2. Then we do the art of skip logic, and I'm just showing you exactly how to do this so it's not confusing. Crafting your own interactive data filters in module 4. We do kind of user design, graphics, that kind of thing in module 5, and then designing your own calculations in module 6. So the whole price of that course is normally £699. And in that, I'm kind of quickly helping you do an audit of your forms. I give you cheat sheets of equations. So just like I've given you a cheat sheet today, right? So it's plug and play. You catch your data entry mistakes. You don't have to try this out on your own. It's like I'm helping you do it, right? You can bring those kind of questions to me and say, well, what about this? And I'll add it to the cheat sheet. You're implementing understandable skip logic to create clear question flows, identifying best design options, making your choice lists dynamic and easy for data collectors to use. So I give you tricks to kind of use and mental patterns and say, look, don't repeat what I've done, all the mistakes I've made, learn from all my mistakes, and so you don't have to repeat them. Use photos in your form for more interesting data collection, copy and paste calculations. So I just give you copy and paste calculations you can use because there are a lot of things that we all use all the time. So you don't have to recreate the wheel, as they say. I'm just giving you a lot of that in the course, but also the understanding and the explanation behind it. The other course that we're running a live cohort of in January is Supercharge Your Excel Spreadsheets. This is intermediate to advanced. So we're going to focus on 3 different topics in Excel. First is the power of Power Query, which is quite fun, but we're doing it in Excel. So it is a whole back-end analysis engine that unleashes a huge amount of power that you can do in Excel. Beautiful dashboards in Excel, and then statistics for everyone in Excel, making them understandable. So not just doing count, what we did here, but how do we kind of do some more advanced calculations, especially great for monitoring and evaluation, that kind of thing, impact evaluation. And that course, again, is usually $699. So that's kind of the value that we're putting onto that course. What I'm going to easily help you achieve in that one is going from your kind of okay everyday user to an on-fire user. Okay, so we want you to kind of be the go-to guru and really feel confident in this. Learn one of the best kept secrets for working with survey data in Excel. That's kind of your wink to Power Query. Making your analysis steps repeatable. So at the click of the button, all that analysis that you did, it just gets repeated. Like we don't have to redo our work. We get everything analyzed at the click of a button. Learning the hacks to make customized visualizations that are clear and impressive. Finally, understanding statistics that are useful for impact projects without the jargon, without the complicated software, just doing everything in Excel. Templates to put into use for your own work so that you can get things done fast. And being confident next time a report requires data analysis, okay? So we're all about the confidence. Now, in the specialist membership, we also have a lot of bonuses. So we have weekly sessions. We do live teaching, but we also do drop-ins, Q&As, that kind of thing. So that's over an £1,800 value because it happens over a year where you've got multiple times where you get to come and chat with me, show me your work, and we'll figure things out. Now, I'm not extra special. It's not that I know everything or do everything. I don't have access to all the important things, but I make a lot of mistakes. I learn from them. I turn them into patterns. I know these work because I'm really working on real world projects. Okay. So I've been doing it for a while. Bonus number 2 is access to the specialist community. So this is a forum, a help desk where you can upload files from what you're working on, and we're going to take a look. If it's Kobo, Power BI, Excel, QGIS, and that's another £250 value. So that's the specialist community, massive value for our students. Access to dashboard intensive, Power BI for survey data. That's another £699 course. And we'll be running that one live in April. So once we're done Excel and Power BI, Excel, then we go, Excel and Kobo Toolbox, then we go into Power BI and QGIS starting in April. So that's dashboard intensive. And what I really recommend is if you're part of the data specialist group, you bring your real work to the drop-ins, right? You're not using practice data, just use your real data, because you're then not learning with fake examples. You're actually figuring out how to do your real data work, okay? And then the brand new course is the QGIS one, which we'll be running live in April, which is the £699 value. So that's mapping for impact. And what I just want to say is, we don't consider ourselves data analysts. We're first of all humanitarians who do data. So all topics we present with the humanitarian examples. It's not like a normal Excel course where you would be looking at, financial modeling. We're doing survey data and impact projects and water and sanitation and healthcare. That's the kind of guidance and data we're working with. And you're learning from others in the room who are working with the similar data sets. And finally, even if you're a beginner, what I'm giving you is access to all the basic courses as well. So, hey, you don't feel really quite ready to jump into advanced Excel. That's okay. Jump in, this month and say, hey, I'm going to take the beginner course, and then I'll be ready in January or February or March to jump into the more advanced course. That's totally fine. So as part of the specialist package, you also get all of the beginner level courses so you can learn anything from scratch. So that's another £500 value in there. So that's all of those courses. So it's an additional value of £3,948. And if we kind of add all of the course values up, all the bonuses of the specialist membership, the total value is £5,346 that I can kind of deliver to you in a package. But the cost is my goal was, how could I get this whole thing down to the same as if you were just taking one course from me? How do I make this as accessible as possible to as many people who can get into this program? So for everything, all that I just mentioned, £699 annually. Now that's the annual cost. You get access to that ongoing support. But if you don't want the ongoing support, that's fine. After a year, you don't have to join for the next year. And anything you've completed in the first year, any course you've taken, any certificate you've earned, you'll always have access to that. Okay, so it's not like you lose access. You took the Kobo Toolbox course, and then after a year, you lose access if you don't join the second year. You 100% will still have that Kobo Toolbox course. You just won't have the drop-ins and the support and everything, but we won't take away any of the course material that you've worked on and gone through. So you'll always retain access of that. So there's a kind of a lifetime access there. If you're interested, it's $699 per person, but if you're joining as a group, like if you have partner organizations, they want to join as a group, or if you have different country programs and you can pull a group together of 6 people, it drops to $599 per person, and for 25 people, $549 per person. So hopefully that helps if you're just kind of thinking, oh, this would be great, but maybe if one person from each country could join, or one from each of our partners could join. So hopefully that kind of helps clarify that. If you're interested, let me pull this over here. I've just got this. For some reason, this isn't showing up over here. No. Let's throw this in here. go to this link if you're interested. And clearly, I've been talking about the specialist membership. We also have the data club, which is for free, and the skill builder community, which is more beginner level courses. So if you wanted to chat about any of it, just click on that link. It takes you through to like a little calendar, and it will give you options to just slot in a time with me, and we'll just chat through kind of where you're at and where's your team at and how can I help get you involved. But hopefully that's really helpful just as kind of a summary of what the Humanitarian Data Academy does and is. And if you ever wanted to just chat, definitely try to book a call, or you can feel free to email me. I put that in. I mean, hopefully you have my email address because I email out all of the details for this webinar. But don't hesitate at all to just drop me a line, and happy to chat. I've just been talking for 2 hours straight, so hopefully you've gotten lots of value out of this webinar. Any questions that I can answer? Oh, cool. Thank you. Been truly insightful. In many donor-funded projects, the reporting templates provided are very rigid and often leave little room to include data-driven insights and visualizations. How can practitioners effectively present those insights within such constrained templates? I totally get that. And I have done, I know when we had lots of data stuff, we had an echo proposal, and the echo form is just very rigid. There's no storytelling or graphics or anything. When you have a proposal, one of the things I like to say is like when the donor sees your proposal come through, hopefully it's not the first time that they've heard of your organization. So what I'd like to say, especially for donors that have quite rigid forms, how can you get them seeing your data without the proposal being the first time? So often they'll attend coordination meetings. So if you're attending a coordination meeting and sharing data, print off your PDF report and take it. Talk about it, share about it. And it doesn't have to be a whole report, but take a chart, volunteer to run a presentation or talk about an innovation you've been running. So I think the main recommendation I would have there, especially for donors that are really quite rigid, is, it is a relationship, and that relationship doesn't necessarily start with the proposal. It usually starts before that. So, the ECHO rep, I was in his office, every week while we were kind of doing a hardcore part of our program. Every month, when we were a little bit lighter, every quarter, maybe we would check in on email once the program was really running smoothly. So, you can send emails to your contacts or do presentations or go in for a meeting. Often, I know we had some donors where we had to meet them at an embassy. We weren't allowed to take in any technology, so you can even show your data. You can take your phone in, you can take your laptop in. And in those cases, we would just print off paper versions. So I think there are different ways around that. Also, a lot of the time, what we've found in big donor proposals that are really rigid, you can attach annexes. So we would often have like 25 different annexes, and one of them was a printout of our dashboard. So those annexes I think can also be interesting. So think about like different ways other than the proposal that you're actually building those relationships and communicating. Great question. Time limit for the offer. Yes, thank you. That's a good question. So what we're doing, we're kind of opening this up for the next couple of weeks. We're trying to enroll people before the 18th of December, and then we'll take a lull, Christmas break over kind of the end of the year, beginning first week of January, while people often are not around. So we'll take a little bit of a break there. And then we'll kickstart the courses in kind of mid-January when everyone's hopefully back and ready to run. Now, I'll still be around, but what we're trying to do in terms of the offer is get everyone enrolled in the next 2 weeks. So you have a bit of a time over Christmas to jump into kind of the self-paced beginner stuff or get to know the platform. And I'll be around to answer questions and everything. But hopefully that makes sense. I'll also send out an email about it, or a few emails, just to kind of explain. Could you share us the sheets having tabular descriptions on visualization and presentation types? Thank you for the very informative presentation. No problem. So this one is where you have all those tips and everything for the presentation types and everything. So that is this one. let me just give you that once again. Yeah, perfect. And often what we find is like, sometimes you need to know about these things, and then you're like, right, I'm going to put this in the budget for next year. Not a problem. And feel free to chat if you want to kind of know more about that or how to prepare. I'm very interested in developing my humanitarian data skills. May I ask if there are any scholarship options or free map access for participants who are unable to pay? So every once in a while, we do have something available where we do, like on a case-by-case basis, consider people who are unable to pay. So if you can reach out to me directly at my email address, that would be great. And we'll kind of be able to move you through an assessment. Can we make these graphs in Excel? I mean, the intermediate and advanced. Yes, so all of these charts that I included here, all of these are in Excel. Yeah, everything is done in Excel. Perfect. All right, I'm going to end there. I have got to run, but thank you so much for joining. I do hope that a few of you will get in touch, and it'd be great to see you in January as we kick off in the new year for our new courses. So definitely be in touch. We'll exchange some emails. I wish you the best as you work on proposals and reports and all of that kind of end of year excitement.